Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Our Home Ground. I'm so excited to be here this week. I actually tried to record this exact episode that I'm going to record today last week, and somehow it did not save with any sound. It was like 35 minutes and just like nothing. So we're going to try it again this week. I have been so crazy. I like rearranged my whole week last week to try to fit in this episode. I recorded it in no sound, and I was like, you know what? That is the first time that I have done that in all of these episodes. And so I was like, it could be so much worse. But I was frustrated and then I was out of town all weekend. And so I just simply didn't have time. So I'm recording it again today. And it's something that I'm really excited to talk about. I feel like it's a bit dated at this moment because everything just moves so fast in the football world, but that's okay. These are things that I think are really important. One of them I was delayed talking about anyways, so it's fine. We're just gonna roll with it. And then I might ad lib some stuff at the end of things that I just think are fun to talk about. So let's get started. First things first, I do want to bring attention to the shirt that I am wearing. It is from Re-Ink, which is Tobin Heath and Kristen Press's brand, and it says "We shatter glass ceilings" on it. And I love this shirt. I wear it quite often. I actually love to wear it when I go on like business trips. If we go out to like dinner or something, I'll wear it with like jeans and a blazer, just to remind everybody what we're doing. But anyways, this shirt is in honor of some glass ceiling shattering that is happening right now in the women's game that I'm super excited about. So let's get into it. So, the first thing that I want to talk about today is Marie-Louise Eta and what is happening at Union Berlin and in the Bundesliga because it is so cool and so exciting. So, if you haven't heard yet, Marie-Louise Eta has become the first woman to be a head coach of a men's team in the top five European leagues. So, not even just the first in the Bundesliga, the first across all five top men's leagues in Europe, which is so cool. She's been making history for a long time at Union Berlin because she became an assistant coach there in 2023. She was the first woman to serve in this role with a men's Bundesliga side and in the men's Champions League. She was the first ever woman assistant coach in the men's Champions League, which is so cool. And then in 2024, she became the first woman to lead a Bundesliga team in a game because she was the like interim head coach or listed as the head coach for a game in 2024 when their head coach was facing a three-game ban. And so she's not unfamiliar with this territory, but this is the first time that a woman has been in this interim role for like the whole or what's remaining of a season, not just like a one game stint. So it's so exciting. And I just love all of the things that are happening around it. So the timeline is that on the 11th of April, Union Berlin sacked their head coach because they're having a rough season. They are sitting in 11th at this moment that I recorded the podcast, which is on the 21st of April. They are sitting in 11th place, which is this place above relegation zone. And they're 6 points clear of relegation at this moment. But the whole reason that the coach was sacked is because they're not having a good season. So I was a little bit nervous that she was being set up for failure and that this was going to be like a whole thing. Because I do still have this like feeling inside of me and I don't like it, but I don't necessarily think that it's wrong yet. I'm hoping that it will become wrong very, very soon. But I do just have this feeling inside of me when there's a woman who's like the first doing something. I so desperately want her to be successful so that people can't use one woman's lack of success, potentially failure, depending on the situation, depending on what's going on, as an example of like women can't do it. I don't think that's at all what's happening here because of the way Union Berlin has been handling this in social media and like in the press since it was announced that she's taking over as interim head coach through the end of the season. They have been so ridiculously incredible talking about how, yes, it is really important and for society and for representation and all of these things that she is the first woman. But they genuinely believe that she is the best person on their staff to be taking this role right now. And so they have been very, very conscious of this. And they also have recognized that, like, she's in a tough spot. Like, the team isn't doing well. And in fact, they actually had already previous to her taking over this interim role, had already announced that she was going to be taking over the women's side next season. So there's like already a pathway for her, sort of regardless of what happens to the men's side this season, she is going to be taking over the women's side. So I'm so excited. She actually coached her first game or had her first game as the head coach over the weekend, and they ended up losing 2-1 to Wolfsburg, which y'all know I don't really follow men's soccer that closely. I'm assuming Wolfsburg is high on the table because their women's team is really good. I don't actually even know if that's true. I'm gonna look really quickly because this is gonna matter. Let me see. Bundesliga table. Okay, so it's actually really important that I looked because Wolfsburg is actually in the relegation zone. So Union Berlin is 11th, but there are 18 teams and only the bottom two get relegated. So they have Union Berlin has 32 points and Wolfsburg has 24, which is actually 8 points. So whatever I saw online that said they were like 6 points clear, they are 8 points clear of the relegation zone at this moment. And everybody's played the same amount of games. They're doing okay, actually. I think they're they expect more and want their team to be doing better, so that's why they fired the coach mid-season. And it does stink that they did lose to Wolfsburg over the weekend. But again, she was put in a position with a team who's not doing well, and they lost 2-1. It's not like they got blown out. So I'm really excited for her. A little bit of history on her. I did take pen and paper notes for the episode this week, so there's that. But as far as her playing career goes, she was a midfielder who played for a couple of different German clubs. She played in all of the German youth national teams, but she didn't make the jump to the senior team. I don't actually know how long she's been coaching because she's only 34, but she's been coaching for multiple years now. So I think when she realized she wasn't going to make the jump after like the under 23s, she started getting into her coaching thing. So she's been coaching for a little bit. Like I said, she's 34. That's so cool. Making all of this history at just now 34 years old. She was the first assistant coach at like 31, 3 years ago in 2023. Like she's just so cool. Um, she has also coached with the under 19, under 15, and under 17 in that order German women's teams. So she is very, very familiar with coaching top quality talent with great teams. Germany has always had a great national team sides. So I'm so excited to see what she does. She did a lot of media after she was appointed to the role, as anyone does. Again, there's like a heightened level of scrutiny about her because she's the first woman in this role. And she was like, yes, I understand the societal importance, but I have to focus on the football right now, which is so true. Like, and I think that I'm starting to feel that kind of attitude from a lot of women in football, not just in women's football, but like football a little bit more broadly, of saying like, yeah, there's a lot of things that we're doing here that are really cool and we are like changing society and doing all these things. And I've got to focus on the game on the pitch. And so when you listen to like the Lionesses talk about the 2022 Euros, they were like so insulated from the incredible impact that they were having at that home Euros, that they didn't really understand because again, like they had to focus. Anyways, all that to say, Marie-Louise Eta, I wish you all the best. I want you to be super successful. I love this for you. Of course, the discourse online has been mixed. That's how it is, and that's okay. I think it's amazing. I think the club really has gotten behind her in really important ways, and I can't wait until she gets her first win. It's going to be so fun and so cool. I'm so excited for her. I mean, up Union Berlin, I guess. I'm not a Union Berlin fan, but I can be now because I just, again, I want her to be successful. And I'm happy that they already have a plan for what she's going to be doing at the end of the season. And I'm really excited to have such a talented coach in the women's game. And I think, there's always an interesting conversation about should we be taking coaches from the men's game into the women's game. That's usually only been about men because there haven't been any women. She has coached in both the men's and the women's games since she's been coaching. So I think this is like a really, really interesting example of like, yeah, technically we're taking someone from the men's game into the women's game, but she's also coached the Germany women's youth teams. And now she's coached the men's Bundesliga side. So it's just so cool. She's just like breaking all the barriers, and I think it's amazing. And I wish her and Union Berlin all the best. Let's transition a little bit because we need to talk about the FIFA rule changes regarding women's national teams and the coaching staffs and the sort of makeup of what those look like. So, this is not new information, and I'm sure that you've seen it other places, but we haven't talked about it yet here. And I really want to because this is something that I'm so excited about and I want to be so excited about. I think I was a little bit hesitant because I don't know. I just think I'm hesitant whenever I think FIFA did anything good because of all of the ridiculously bad things that they do, like giving Trump a peace prize, like ridiculous behavior. And all the things that have gone on with the World Cup in the US are just not great, in my opinion. And FIFA historically has not been great. So, anyways, all of that to say, I was cautiously optimistic. I am still cautiously optimistic, but I want to have hope that this is going to go really well. So, on the 19th of March, new regulations were dropped that mandate female representation in team leadership across all competitions. So, this applies to all youth tournaments, senior tournaments, national team competitions, and club competitions. So, anything that FIFA is in charge of for the women's game, these requirements are part of it. So, what are these requirements? So, every coach must have a head coach and or one assistant coach that is female. And I'm being very intentional about the words that I'm using here. FIFA uses the word female. I think if you're clued into this conversation surrounding sex and gender in sport, especially women's sport, these words are used intentionally. I much prefer to use the word woman because I think gender expression is much more important than whatever you were assigned at birth or whatever biology might or might not tell us, as we know, if you're looking at any of the science, that sex is not black and white, it is not male and female. There is so much variation. So, anyways, I'm just saying FIFA used the word female, so we're going to use the word female when we're talking strictly about the regulations and things that they have said. And then when we get into a little bit more of the discussion afterwards, I'm probably going to switch to using the word woman because I just think that's a much truer representation in what we should actually be worrying about. But y'all know how I feel about that whole conversation. I've made that very clear. Back to the requirements. So, like I said, head coach and or one assistant coach must be female. At least one of the medical staff must be female, and at least two officials seated on a bench during a game must be female. When I think about these things, it seems super obvious that those things would be true, especially for me, it's the medical staff that seems like obvious that that would need to be the case. And we'll get into this in a little bit. I did look at some of the top teams to see how well they comply, and it's really hard to find information about medical staffs. I imagine because they change quite a bit. But I don't actually know exactly what the definition of medical staff is. Like, is that only the team physicians? Does that include the physios? And like, that's what they call them in Europe, but here we would call that like, I don't know, physical therapists or athletic trainers. Are those included in the medical staff? Because when I'm watching soccer, when I see two people running onto the field whenever somebody gets injured, it's rare that they're both men or both presenting male, men, masculine. I don't exactly know what words to use. Like, I feel like I'm often seeing people who are presenting as women in those roles. And so it seems like we're there. But obviously we're not, because if we have to regulate it, then we're obviously not there. So, not everybody's there, at least, I guess. So, I think on the surface, my initial response is these are great because they feel really attainable. Another part of me is a little bit like, one, you guys, really? But we'll get into this a little bit because I think that's this sort of like interesting part because there's a gap in or I don't know, like a void of people who have experience and are available to like fill a lot of these roles. And so we'll talk about that in just a second. But just in terms of timeline, these requirements will debut at the U20 World Cup, which is in Poland in September. They're also supposed to be used in the U17 World Cup that's supposed to be this year. I don't know the exact dates of that. And the FIFA Women's Champions Cup, which is also supposed to be this year. So we'll see. And then obviously, these will be the requirements at the FIFA Women's World Cup in Brazil in 2027. So that's sort of the time frame of when these things are rolling out. These teams have to have it by September. But this, and I think what's important to remember here is I think most, at least of the top national teams in the world, most of which have under 15, under 17, under 19, under 20. Is it under 20 or under 21? I think it's under 20. I think it used to be 21. And I actually think it depends on the competition, anyways, and under 23 teams, plus the senior team. Each of these teams has to meet these requirements. I imagine that a lot of the medical teams have some overlap, but when you think of the senior teams, I'm like, obviously, this feels like the bare minimum. When you think about the U.S. women's national team, that's 6 teams that have to meet that, which means we have to have 6 whatever women who are qualified to be in those roles, the coaching and in the medical for, anyways. So it's a lot of women, which is amazing. And there's been a dearth of opportunity, which means that a lot of women don't have a lot of experience or the kinds of experience that we would want them to have because they have been barred from getting that experience. Not because they're not qualified, not because they wouldn't be good at it, but simply because we have put barriers to make it impossible for them. And that's just the truth. So Jill Ellis, who I happen to have very mixed feelings about, who is the chief football officer for FIFA, said that there are just simply not enough women in coaching. She went on to say that they must do more to accelerate change by creating career pathways, expanding opportunities, and increasing visibility for women on our sidelines, which I think is great because as the game has exploded, right? We see the representation on the pitch. We see these incredible women playing their hearts out, doing the things, and we're not seeing necessarily that same growth on the sidelines in terms of coaching, medical staff. We're seeing the same handful, maybe 10 women who have been influential in women's soccer for 20 years, just kind of getting shifted around. We're not seeing a ton of new names come in. There are a few in the past couple of years that come to mind, one of which being Renee Slagers. Obviously, I'm biased because I'm an Arsenal fan, but this is her first head coaching job. And so that's important that she has come onto the scene. But this is all of these requirements, all of the things, everything that FIFA is doing right now are part of its broader strategy to ensure that the rapid growth of the women's game is matched by an increased representation of women in technical and leadership roles. So I thought, as I was reading these things, I was like, this seems obvious to me. It seems like this wouldn't necessarily create that big of a change, which I think is a little bit important right now. Because what you don't want, again, and I think this gets what I talked to earlier, women don't want women getting jobs simply because they're a woman. That's not what we're asking for. What we're asking for is it's the Ruth Bader Ginsburg quote that's I'm not asking you to do anything special. I'm simply asking you to get, I don't actually know what the quote is, so I'm making this up at this moment, but I know the end part. But it's I'm not asking you to give me anything special. I'm just asking you to take your foot off my neck. That's what we're asking for. Give us the opportunity or don't take away the opportunities, right? And so as I was thinking about this, I was mostly thinking on the senior level. Then, obviously, as I was just talking about, I've thought about how it trickles down to all of the youth teams as well. And I think those are incredible opportunities for people to get experience in coaching in these elite, but a little bit lower stakes environments. I think it's incredible those to be in a pathway, at least for the US women's national team or for England, to these are the two that are coming to mind immediately, but to be in a pathway in which the person at the helm is an incredibly talented female coach who is a woman, is great. To be under a system run by Serena Wiegman, under a system run by Emma Hayes, who have proven that they are elite, fantastic, two of the best coaches in the world, is a great opportunity. And so I'm really excited about that. And I think getting more women coaches in these youth teams underneath these fantastic senior coaches is a great way to help feed this environment. FIFA's doing a lot of other things too, which we'll get into in a little bit. But as I was thinking about this, I was like, how many of the top 10 teams in the world actually already meet these requirements? Like, what kind of change will be required? What I will say is, because I tried to record this episode last week, this data is now old because FIFA today dropped new world rankings in which Korea, DPR dropped out. They were 10. Now they're not. I think Netherlands is 10 now. Otherwise, I think all the teams are the same, but they have shifted in order. Anyways, at the time that I did my research, what I sort of started with was, what did the World Cup look like? So there's a stat that says that at the 2023 Women's World Cup, 12 of the 32 head coaches were women, which is not horrific, actually. It is between a third and half. So again, like not great, but not, it could be worse. And maybe that's an attitude that I need to be like, no, this is bad. It's not even half. And there are more. Yes. And again, we want these women to be given the opportunities to have the experience because they are qualified. Otherwise, they potentially lack experience because of lack of opportunity, right? So we want this balance to go well. But so that's what it was in 2023. I looked up last week's top 10 teams to see how many of them meet the requirement. And all of them, with potentially the exception of Korea DPR, which is essentially North Korea, all 9 of the top 10 already met the criteria of the coach. So we had, of the top 10, we had 3 women's head coaches. Spain, nope. 4, sorry, we had 4 teams have women head coaches: Spain, US, England, and Canada. And then Germany has 2 women who are assistant coaches. Japan, France, Sweden, Brazil, and Canada all have and the US have at least one, and Spain. Huh. Spain, US, Germany, Japan, France, Sweden, Brazil, and Canada all have at least one woman in their assistant coaching staff, which is great. So most of them not only meet the requirement, but beat their requirement, which is great. Finding information on the medical staffs is really difficult. Spain actually did like a little graphic that they put out a few months ago. I think this was when the current head coach, so it was probably like a year ago, I say a few months. When their head coach was like officially appointed, she was interim and then she got like the official role. They put out a little graphic of like who's sort of in charge of what, and they actually do have a woman in charge of their medical staff at the moment. Now I can't remember. I had it translated from, but she's like a physio. So I don't think she's a team doctor, but she's on the medical staff. So I think that counts. Couldn't find any information about anybody else's medical staff. At the senior level, the top 10 teams seem to be in decent shape. I don't actually know about Netherlands right now. I do believe their head coach is a man because he was one of Serena Wiegman's assistant coaches, who is now the head coach of the Netherlands. I don't know what their assistant coaching situation looks like because they were not in the top 10 at this time. And I think that they've cracked the top 10 again, but I also may have made that up. Go look for yourself. It came out today on the 21st. So if you're listening to this later, it's out. You can find it really easily. So all of that to say, the senior teams seem to be in really good shape. And that's really exciting for me because hopefully this won't cause huge sort of like waves and like tsunami type problems. I imagine as we get into lower ranked teams, which often then correlates with like less well funded, less well supported, less resources, the number of women who will be in leadership positions on those teams will probably be lower. And so that's something to keep an eye out for. But at least on the surface, I'm really excited about this because FIFA seems to have acknowledged that there is not necessary, well, a problem. I mean, they're putting out these requirements because they're trying to solve what I would call a problem. They're trying to initiate change or hold a standard, and they're upping the standard, which I appreciate. And they are also creating pipelines to support more women in coaching. So, since 2021, they have supported 795 female coaches through their coach education scholarship program, which is fantastic. Very excited. That's a big number, 795 female coaches that have been educated through FIFA, which is great. In 2026, they're having a third edition of their coach mentoring program for 20 emerging female coaches. And then they have also developed a dedicated female coach educators development pathway designed to expand. Hello, I'm struggling. Designed to expand the global network of instructors who can train and mentor next generation women coaches. So they are building out this framework in really, really important ways to continue to support the development of women in coaching, which I think is phenomenal because then these women can come in and do the things that they have been qualified to do for so long and just haven't been able to get the experience to do. And I'm so excited about it. I want to see the data, and I'm sure they're collecting all of the data on this. I don't know how one could ever get access to this, but I want it. I want to see like how this changes on the youth coaching levels, youth national team coaching levels. And I think this is going to affect club teams in really important ways because if they want to be competing in the Champions Cup, then they have to also meet these same criteria, which I think is great. So overall, I'm like cautiously optimistic about this. I do want to see how it shakes out. But on the surface, I think that these are really important things. And I don't think that they're asking for the moon. Like, I think they have set the sort of like floor standard, which is really important because I do think that I don't know if this was like Megan Rapinoe talking about this. I think Sam Ewis has talked about it. Maybe she was talking about it with Megan Rapinoe. I don't know. Talking about in terms of like you have the ceiling raisers, the people who always push through. I think Becky Sauerbrunn was talking about this too. So maybe it was Sam and Becky who were talking about this. Anyways, you have the people who always are raising the ceiling, pushing us higher, shattering the glass ceilings, all of those things. And then you have the people who raise the floor. And I do think the job of these sort of federations on whatever level they are, it is their job to raise the floor, to set the standard, the minimum acceptable standard, and raise it, and then raise it a little more, and raise it a little more in ways that don't shut people out or teams out, but force people into doing things that are believed to be really important for the game. And so overall, I'm super excited about this, I think. And the more I talk about it, the more excited I am about it. So we'll see how it all shakes out. But yeah, that's what I have to say about that. I think in terms of what the heck is going on in the women's game, currently the international window just ended. It was a crazy one. The U.S. women's national team played Japan 3 times, won the first one, I think 1-0, lost the second one 1-0, won the third one 3-0. Statement there, I think, for sure. England played Spain at Wembley and beat Spain 1-0, and then went and beat Iceland in their 500th game and won that game 1-0 as well, having them have all 12 points out of their first 4 games in terms of World Cup qualifying, which is huge because only one team out of the group qualifies outright. So this is big. Spain did really claw back the goal differential, beating Ukraine 5-0. That group is interesting, I'd say. Ireland had a huge window. They beat Poland both home and away, which is I don't think I would have expected that. They won the first game, I think like 3-2, and the second game 1-0. Katie McCabe had a banger volley goal. She is in incredible form at this moment, which is exciting and fun for her. I'm really excited for her. Their group also has Netherlands and France, which I think France is, no, there's like a 1 point difference. Maybe Netherlands is first in the group with like 8 points, and then France has 7 points or something. It's really tight. And then Ireland is in third, and Poland sitting in fourth. And that's important because there is still like a playoff pathway to try to qualify for the World Cup. And where you end in your group matters for who you could play, like what other teams you might play. So, very exciting international window for Ireland. Who else? I mean, everybody played Denmark and Sweden. Denmark is top of the group. I believe that they are in the same group as Sweden. Now I'm gonna go back and look because I need to know. Let's see. Denmark is on 8 points, Sweden is on 7 points, Italy on five. So that's a tight group, which is, I just think it's fun and exciting. I'm now double checking the France and Netherlands. Yeah, Netherlands has 8 points and France has seven, which is, I think, exactly what I said. Look at it's all locked in here. So, anyways, really exciting World Cup qualifying going on this window. There are a couple of FIFA series in different areas of the world. I believe Canada and Brazil played in one, and I think Brazil won that one, but I'm not entirely sure. And then Australia played in one in Kenya, and they won that one. So fun, exciting. There's just so much going on. We are back in club crazy part of the season for the European teams. We are this weekend will be the semifinals of the Women's Champions League with Arsenal playing Lyon and Barca playing Bayern Munich. It's going to be two really good games. There are two leg finals, so it'll be this weekend and the following weekend. Excited about that. WSL is heating up to try to see who's going to qualify for Champions League next year. NWSL, chaotic as always, so much going on. I'm so excited about it. Today it was announced that Columbus, Ohio will be the 18th NWSL team, which I think is really exciting. There's also a lot of conversation because the NWSL board, I think, is voting on whether or not to change the calendar to match the European calendar. So to play from like, I don't, roughly September through May instead of March through November. I haven't decided how I feel about that. I'll probably talk about that at another time when I have a little more thought on that. But interesting, I think having major tournaments in the summer when all majority of your players are in mid-season form has been a tremendous advantage for the US men's national team over the years. I do think that it makes it more difficult if players want to transfer to the NWSL from Europe because then Lindsay Heaps is doing it. Her season started in late August, early September is when she started preseason with Leon in like August, and she will be going through November. So, like, well over a full year of being in season, what that does to a player's body, all of that I think is difficult. And that's because she's coming at the end of her season. I guess if you come over in January, then you get like a couple of weeks because the team's in preseason. You probably aren't doing like a full preseason with them because you're midseason. Anyways, like I said, I don't really know how I feel about it. I wonder how the heck they're going to have games in January in Denver or in Boston or in New York. But you know what? Nobody asked me. Yeah, I just think there are so many advantages. And then there are also so many like, how? Like, how are we going to do that? So, anyways, so much going on. So much going on. And I just love every moment of it. I can't wait for June when the final match day of the World Cup qualifiers for Europe play. Obviously, there will be more. It's just the first group, whoever takes first in each of the UEFA group or UEFA A. I don't group A. No, it's not group A. Whatever. There's A, B, and C that the teams are divided on based on strength and winning and losing and all these things, lots of calculations. So, depending on how each team in the A category, we'll go with that. In the A category, each team that wins the group automatically qualifies for the World Cup. So, we'll find that out in June and then we'll just sort of go from there. But yeah, I love this time of year. I love watching the NWSL and the chaos of it. I love the like tension of the Champions League and all that rides on that. I love the end of the season feistiness in the WSL. And I don't love all of them, but all the rumors about who's leaving which teams and who's signing where. And there's a rumor today that Arsenal have pretty much gotten Ona Battier. They haven't signed a contract, but it's like she said she's coming. They're just ironing out the details. Stina Blackstenius just re-signed. Rumors that Aggie Beaver Jones is signing a new contract with Chelsea. I don't know. Hannah Hampton is rumored to be getting a new contract with Chelsea, but like, what's Sam Kerr gonna do? What's Millie Bright gonna do? What's Beth Mead gonna do? The Beth Mead of it all might shatter me, so we'll see if I ever talk about that. She goes anywhere other than renewing with Arsenal, I will be in a state of mourning. So we'll see if I talk about it or not. Where's Georgia Stanway going? It's supposed to be Arsenal. Bunny Shaw is out of contract. Nothing has been announced there. Like, there are some big names, big players. Leah Williamson's out of contract. She hasn't signed a new one yet. There's just a lot going on right now. It's a crazy time. There's so much to talk about. But I'm really going to try to not make these episodes so long. So, yeah. Anyways, maybe we'll talk about these things as we move forward, but we'll just see. And maybe I'll be able to keep my promise of having guests back on when my life calms down a little bit. I'm not sure if it ever will, but we'll see what we could do. Anyways, that's all I have for you this week. I hope everybody has a great week, and I'll catch you next time.